I remember the exact moment the envelope landed at my doorstep. The courier, a young man with an indifferent expression, handed it over without a word, completely unaware that he had just delivered the death sentence to my marriage. A simple white envelope, no different from 100 others I had received over the years, but this one carried something far heavier than paper. It carried finality. I turned it over in my hands, staring at my name, Nathan Carter, printed in cold, emotionless black ink. There was no sender's name, but I didn't need one. I already knew who it was from. Madeline Carter, my wife of 30 years. My fingers were steady as I tore open the seal, but my heart was a different story. A part of me already knew what was inside, yet another part clung to the last thread of hope, the foolish belief that she would at least talk to me before doing something this drastic. I unfolded the crisp pages and read the words that changed everything. Divorce petition. The words blurred for a moment before sharpening into something undeniable. I skimmed down, past the legal jargon and formalities, straight to the demands. A substantial amount of alimony. My breath came slow and controlled, but inside, a storm was brewing. Alimony? After everything I had provided? After decades of sacrificing my time, my energy, my very life for this family? The absurdity of it nearly made me laugh. I read further, and the pit in my stomach deepened. She had already signed. Not a word to me. Not even the courtesy of a conversation. Just a set of neatly signed documents demanding that I, the man who had built everything we had, now pay her for the privilege of leaving. And then, a final twist of the knife. Our daughter, Lily, was listed as supporting the divorce. I ran a hand through my hair, forcing myself to breathe. I had always known that Madeline's influence on Lily was strong, but to see my own child side with her mother without hesitation, that cut deeper than anything. Before I could stop myself, I picked up my phone and dialed Madeline. She answered on the third ring. "Nathan," she said smoothly, as if she had been expecting my call. "You didn't hesitate, did you?" My voice was steady, but I could hear the edge beneath it. A pause. Then, she exhaled softly. "I don't see why I should have. This was bound to happen sooner or later." I swallowed the bitterness rising in my throat. "You didn't think we should talk about it first?" She gave a small, almost amused chuckle. "What is there to discuss, Nathan? You're never here. Always on a plane, always in some meeting. It's about time I started thinking about my own happiness." I gripped the phone tighter. "Happiness? And what about Lily? What about—" "Oh, don't bring Lily into this," she snapped, and for the first time, there was something real in her voice. "She agrees with me. She sees it too. You were never present." My jaw tightened. "So you turned her against me." Madeline let out an exasperated sigh. "Nathan, she's a grown woman. She made up her own mind." I closed my eyes, trying to suppress the raw betrayal pulsing through me. Lily had once been my little girl, the child who used to run into my arms whenever I came home from a long trip. Now, she was standing on the opposite side, looking at me like a stranger. Madeline's voice softened, but I could hear the smug satisfaction beneath it. "This will make our lives easier, Nathan. Our lives. Not yours. Not mine." She was speaking for both of them, her and Lily, as if I had never been a part of their world. I took a slow breath, staring at the divorce papers on the table. The ink had dried. The decision was made. "You'll get everything you deserve," I finally said. There was a pause, then a quiet hum of approval. "Good. Then let's not make this harder than it needs to be." I didn't respond. Instead, my mind shifted into a different gear, the same gear I used in high-stakes negotiations, the one that removed emotion and focused solely on strategy. Madeline thought she had won. She thought I would roll over, sign the papers, and hand her everything without a fight. But what she didn't realize was that I never walked away from a negotiation without ensuring it ended on my terms. She wanted everything? Fine. She just didn't realize what everything actually was. I ended the call and set my phone down. For the first time in years, I felt something close to relief. The game had just begun. I never expected my life to unfold this way. 30 years ago, if someone had told me that I would one day be sitting in a foreign country, staring at divorce papers from the woman I had once loved, I would have laughed in their face. Back then, I was young, ambitious, and naive, too focused on my career to understand the depth of the choices I was making. But I see it all clearly now. Madeline wasn't always like this. Or maybe she was, and I was just too blind to see it. I met her at Hamilton and Clark, The trading company where I had started as an eager young salesman, determined to climb the corporate ladder. She was a receptionist, the woman everyone wanted to be around, effortlessly charming with a beauty that drew attention wherever she went. I was different from the other men who chased after her. Fresh out of college, I had no experience with women, no time for dating, no desire to play games. But Madeline, she set her sights on me. It started with subtle gestures, a lingering glance, a playful smile, a note passed along with my morning coffee, scrawled with little compliments about my hard work. She knew what she was doing, and I, completely oblivious to office politics, thought nothing of it. Then, one day, she handed me a hairpin. I remember the way she did it, so casually, as if it meant nothing. I turned it over in my hands, confused, until I saw the small inscription on the back, her phone number. Most men would have been ecstatic. Me? I ignored it. I was too focused on my career, too busy proving myself to care about flirtation. I barely gave it a second thought. But Madeline wasn't the type to be ignored. She confronted me outside the office one evening, stopping me before I could leave. "Why didn't you call me?" she asked, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. I hesitated, caught off guard. "I've been busy." She smirked, shaking her head. "Too busy to even say hello? Too busy for dinner?" Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs. The way she was so calculated, so persistent. But I was young, and I had no experience with women like her. So I said yes. That first dinner led to more, and before I knew it, we were together. At first, it felt right. She admired my dedication, spoke about our future with excitement, always encouraging my dreams. "You're going to be an executive one day," she would say, eyes shining. "And I'll be right there beside you." I believed her. 3 years later, I proposed. "I'll be by your side forever," she said that night, clutching my hand with so much conviction that I never once doubted her sincerity. If only I had known. Marriage and the slow unraveling. At first, things were good. After we married, Madeline quit her job, something she claimed she had always wanted. "Why work when I can focus on our home?" she had said with a smile. It made sense to me. I was making enough money for both of us. I wanted to provide. Then Lily came along. The pregnancy was difficult. Madeline was constantly ill, too exhausted to do much around the house. I took on extra responsibilities, cooking, cleaning, making sure she was comfortable. It was my duty as a husband. I told myself things would get better after Lily was born. They didn't. Madeline's exhaustion turned into constant dissatisfaction. She resented how much I worked, but when I stayed home to help, she resented that too. There was no winning. "You're always gone," she would say, voice laced with irritation. "I'm doing this for us," I would remind her. For Lily. But it was never enough. The warm, supportive wife I had married vanished, replaced by someone who looked at me like I was just another piece of furniture in the house, something useful, but not particularly valued. I chalked it up to stress. New parents struggled. It was normal. But as the years passed, I realized something terrible. Madeline wasn't struggling. She had simply stopped caring. Lily was different. As a child, she adored me. I was her hero, her protector, her father. I would come home from a long trip, and she would run to the door, arms wide, waiting to be lifted into the air. Those were the moments that made everything worth it. But as she grew older, things changed. She started gravitating toward Madeline, picking up her mother's attitudes, her mannerisms, her entitlement. I would hear them whispering together, giggling over something, only for them to go silent the moment I entered the room. When I tried to talk to Lily, I was met with disinterest at best, irritation at worst. "Dad, not now," she would say, brushing past me. I convinced myself it was normal. Teenagers were rebellious. They needed space. But then the comments started. "Dad, you're always working. You don't even know what's going on in my life. Mom's right. You never have time for us." I didn't understand. I had done everything for them, given them everything. And yet, somehow, I was the problem. The house I paid for, the private schools, the vacations, the designer clothes Madeline insisted Lily needed, none of it mattered. I was just a wallet to them. The final years of our marriage were a slow, painful death. Madeline and I no longer shared a bedroom. That had ended nearly 2 decades ago. The intimacy we once had was a distant memory, something from a different lifetime. I told myself I was staying for Lily, but the truth? I was just delaying the inevitable. There were moments when I thought about divorce. I imagined starting over, finding someone who actually valued me, who didn't see me as an ATM and an inconvenience rolled into one. But every time I considered it, I thought of Lily. She wasn't the little girl who ran into my arms anymore, but she was still my daughter. And despite everything, I couldn't bring myself to walk away. So I stayed. I worked. I sacrificed. And in return, Madeline sent me divorce papers without a single conversation. She made the choice for me. And Lily? She sided with her mother. All those years, all that effort, wasted. But as I stared at those papers, something shifted inside me. Maybe this was my chance. Maybe this was my freedom. Madeline thought she had won. She thought I would hand everything over, sign the papers, and disappear. But what she didn't realize was that I had spent decades negotiating high-stakes deals, studying people, learning how to play the game better than anyone. And now, it was my turn to play. She wanted everything? Fine. She just didn't understand what everything truly was. And when she finally figured it out, it would be too late. They say blood is thicker than water. That no matter how much the world changes, your family is supposed to be the one constant you can rely on. But what happens when you realize that the people you sacrificed everything for never truly saw you as family? That realization didn't come to me all at once. It happened in pieces, small, sharp fragments that cut deeper the more I tried to ignore them. I still remember when Lily was little, how she used to run to me when I got home from a business trip. She would throw her tiny arms around my legs, giggling, telling me how much she missed me. Those were the moments I cherished most. No matter how exhausted I was, no matter how much stress I carried from work, hearing my daughter's laughter made it all worthwhile. But somewhere along the way, that little girl disappeared. The shift, it started subtly. Lily stopped waiting at the door for me. Then, she stopped asking me to read her bedtime stories. By the time she was a teenager, she barely looked up from her phone when I walked through the front door. Madeline always said it was just a phase. Teenagers are like that, she told me, rolling her eyes as if I were overreacting. So I gave Lily space. I try not to take it personally. But then, I started noticing the conversations. Whenever I entered the room, they would stop talking. I would catch the tail end of a joke, the sound of laughter between them, and then silence. They weren't even trying to hide it. Madeline would smirk. Lily would shrug. And I would tell myself I was imagining things. But I wasn't. The mockery. The first time I overheard what they really thought of me, I told myself it wasn't a big deal. It was late. I had just finished packing for a business trip and was heading to the kitchen to grab a cup of coffee when I heard their voices from the living room. He's making such a big show of packing by himself, Madeline muttered, her voice laced with amusement. Lily snorted. Well, at least it keeps him out of our way. My grip tightened around the coffee mug. I cleared my throat before stepping into the room. Lily looked up, feigning innocence. Oh, Dad, are you all packed? Madeline didn't even look at me. She just crossed her arms and kept watching TV. I forced a smile. Yeah, early departure tomorrow. I wanted to say more, to ask them why they resented me so much, why they made me feel like a stranger in my own home. But I knew I wouldn't get an answer. Instead, I went back to my room, where I had been sleeping alone for years. A house, not a home. Madeline and I hadn't shared a bedroom in nearly 2 decades. I don't even remember how it happened. One night, she told me she was tired and wanted space. Then, space became separate beds. Separate beds became separate rooms. And before I knew it, we had become nothing more than 2 people living under the same roof, sharing a last name, but nothing else. At first, I thought it was temporary, that she would come back to me. She never did. I should have left then. I should have walked away the moment I realized my marriage was a hollow shell. But I stayed. For Lily. For the family I thought I had. Lily's true colors. It wasn't just the distance. It was how easily she dismissed me. By the time she was in college, our interactions were transactional at best. Dad, I need money for books. Dad, can you send me money for rent? Dad, my friends and I are going on a trip. Can you help? Not once did she ask how I was doing. Not once did she call just to check in. I was a walking ATM to her. Madeline, of course, encouraged it. She's young, Nathan. Let her enjoy herself. And I did. I let her enjoy herself. I paid for everything. But what hurt the most was when I overheard her talking to her friends one night. I had just walked in from work, exhausted, my tie loosened, my briefcase still in hand. As I stepped into the hallway, I heard her laughing in the kitchen, the sound light and careless. Ugh, my dad is so boring, she said. He's always going on about responsibility and hard work. He's so old-fashioned. Her friends giggled. Yeah, but at least he's loaded, one of them replied. That's gotta count for something. Lily didn't even hesitate before responding. I mean, yeah, he's useful. Useful. Not loved. Not respected. Useful. I stood there, rooted in place, listening to my daughter reduce me to nothing more than a convenience. And for the first time, I asked myself a question I had never dared to before. What if she never really saw me as her father? The final straw. The day I received the divorce papers, I wasn't just betrayed by Madeline. I was betrayed by Lily too. Madeline's name was there, cold and formal. But underneath, in black ink, was Lily's signature. She had sided with her mother without even talking to me. I called Madeline immediately, my voice controlled but tight. You didn't even give me a chance to talk to Lily? I asked. Madeline laughed. She doesn't need to talk to you, Nathan. She understands. You were never really here. I clenched my jaw. I worked to give you both everything. And now you're going to give me what I deserve. She said it so easily. Like I meant nothing. Like I had never mattered. In the background, I heard Lily's voice. That's right, Dad. You have to take responsibility. Responsibility. For what? For giving them a life of comfort? For making sure they never wanted for anything? For being the one person they could rely on, only to be tossed aside when I was no longer useful? Something inside me shifted. They thought I was going to break. They thought I would crumble under the weight of their betrayal. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I exhaled slowly, staring at the divorce papers one last time before setting them down. Fine, I said. Madeline hummed, pleased. Good. Then we won't have to drag this out. I didn't argue, didn't fight, because I had already decided. I would give them everything. But they had no idea what everything truly meant. And when they finally realized, it would be far too late. Some truths come slowly, creeping into the cracks of your life like water seeping through stone. Others hit you all at once, leaving you breathless, forcing you to look at the people you thought you knew and see them for what they really are. My truth arrived like a wrecking ball. For years, I had ignored the signs. I had chalked up Madeline's indifference to marriage fatigue, told myself that Lily's growing distance was just part of being a teenager. I made excuses for the way they treated me, convinced myself that all families went through rough patches. But deep down, I think I always knew. I just wasn't ready to face it. Not until I had no choice. The moment that changed everything. It happened in Bangkok. I had been scheduled to meet a client for dinner, a last-minute arrangement after my business negotiations had wrapped up earlier than expected. The restaurant was one of those high-end places, the kind where people spoke in hushed voices and the waiters moved with rehearsed elegance. My client called, apologizing that he was running late. No problem, I told him, settling in with a black coffee. I had been flipping through emails when a familiar voice caught my attention. I looked up. Across the restaurant, partially hidden by a pillar, Madeline was sitting at a table, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. Her posture was relaxed, her expression animated. She was giddy, and across from her sat Carter, my former boss. I froze. Carter had been a senior executive at Hamilton and Clark before retiring a few years ago. He had been the one to introduce me to Madeline, even toasting at our wedding, calling us the perfect couple. But what I was seeing now, this was not the dynamic of old acquaintances catching up. There was an intimacy between them. The way he leaned in slightly, the way she rested her fingers against his wrist as she laughed. It was the kind of touch reserved for lovers. I should have walked away. I should have left before I heard anything that would destroy the last remnants of the life I had built. But I didn't. I sat there, hidden by the pillar, and I listened. The betrayal confirmed. Lucy's really into K-pop idols now, Carter was saying, chuckling. She's been talking about traveling to Seoul for a concert. Lucy. The name meant nothing to me. At first. Until Madeline spoke. Well, she gets it from you, she said, stirring her wine. Your daughter has expensive taste. I stiffened. Carter smiled. I just want her to have the best. Madeline sighed. She knows who you are, you know. She's proud of it. I gripped my coffee cup so hard I thought it might shatter. Lily. They were talking about Lily. Carter wasn't just an old friend. He was her father. And Madeline knew. She had always known. The weight of the lie. I couldn't breathe. The entire room faded. The sounds of clinking glasses, the murmured conversations, the soft music, none of it existed anymore. I had spent nearly 3 decades raising another man's child, believing she was mine, sacrificing everything for a family that had never belonged to me. And they had laughed about it, mocked me. He really has no clue? Carter asked, amusement lacing his tone. None, Madeline said, smiling. He's always been too busy working. He never even questioned it. I gritted my teeth. You know, there was a moment after he proposed when I thought I might get caught, she continued, swirling her wine. But I let my guard down. And once Lily was born, it was easy. Carter chuckled. Well, it worked out. He raised her well. Madeline clinked her glass against his. And now, he's going to take care of us both for the rest of his life. Shattered illusions. I don't remember how I got out of that restaurant. One moment, I was sitting there, gripping my coffee. The next, I was outside, the warm Bangkok air pressing against my skin, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might stop. I walked for hours, aimless, lost in a fog of rage and humiliation. Every memory I had of Lily, her first steps, her school plays, her graduation, all of it was a lie. She wasn't my daughter. She never had been. And yet, I had built my entire life around her and Madeline, believing they were my family. I thought about every time I had been mocked, dismissed, treated like an outsider in my own home. I had never been their husband. I had never been their father. I was just their provider. The DNA test. The next time I saw Lily, she was passed out on the couch, her makeup smeared from a night out. I stood over her, staring at the daughter I had loved more than anything, and I knew what I had to do. I needed proof. A few strands of hair. A used glass from the sink. It didn't take much. The results came back a week later. 0% probability of paternity. I sat at my desk, staring at the paper, my hands trembling. I had known. But seeing it, seeing the confirmation in black and white, was something else entirely. Something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to be their fool anymore. I wasn't going to give Madeline another cent. The plan takes shape. Most men in my position would have lashed out. They would have confronted their wife, screamed at their child, demanded answers. But I wasn't most men. I had spent my entire career learning how to navigate high-stakes negotiations, how to strategize, how to come out on top. And now, I had one final deal to make. I sat back, breathing deeply. Madeline wanted a divorce? Fine. Lily wanted to side with her? Fine. They thought they were going to take everything from me. They had no idea what was coming. I let them believe they had won. I signed the papers. I played the role of the defeated husband. But while they were celebrating their victory, I was preparing their downfall. They had spent decades lying to me. They had treated me like a fool. Now, it was my turn to return the favor. Revenge is best served cold. And when you've spent 3 decades being played, manipulated, and discarded like an old coat, you learn that patience is your greatest weapon. I didn't lash out. I didn't confront Madeline in some dramatic, soap opera-style showdown. No raised voices, no slammed doors. That's exactly what she expected. She wanted to see me broken, desperate. She wanted the satisfaction of watching me beg. So I gave her nothing. I signed the divorce papers without a single question, without an ounce of hesitation. And in that moment, I saw the first flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. She thought she had won. She had no idea that I had already set the pieces of my plan in motion. The perfect disguise. When I returned home from Bangkok, I was met with a strange calmness. The air in the house was different, lighter, like something had been lifted off me. Maybe it was the weight of the truth. I had spent years walking on eggshells in my own home. Every conversation with Madeline was a landmine. Every interaction with Lily was filled with an invisible tension. Now I was free. But freedom alone wasn't enough. I had to make them feel what I had felt. Madeline thought she was taking everything from me. The house, the money, the status. She thought she was walking away with the ultimate prize. She was wrong. The first move. I made a call. Not to a lawyer, not to a friend, but to a financial investigator. I wanted a clear picture of every asset in my name, every joint account, every investment tied to Madeline. And what I found, it was worse than I expected. She had been bleeding me dry for years. Luxury shopping sprees, hidden accounts, money funneled into trips I never knew she took. And Lily? She was just as guilty. She had been using my credit cards for years, running up thousands in designer clothes, expensive restaurants, and 5-star vacations. While I was working overnight shifts, missing holidays and birthdays, they were out spending money like it grew on trees. Time to turn the tables. They thought they were stripping me of everything. They had no idea that I had already begun rewriting the rules of the game. The first step was separating assets. Madeline wanted everything? Fine. I would give her everything, but only the parts that were worthless. Within a week, I had transferred ownership of all the valuable assets out of my name. The luxury condo? Gone. The stocks? Liquidated. The business investments? Cashed out. And the house? The house was never in my name to begin with. Madeline's victory. The day the divorce was finalized, Madeline celebrated like she had won the lottery. She had a smug, satisfied look on her face as we sat in the lawyer's office. "You'll find that everything is in order," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "I hope we can handle this maturely." I nodded, keeping my expression blank. Of course. She expected me to argue over assets, to fight for the house, the money, the investments. Instead, I sat back and let her believe she had won. She walked out of that office thinking she had just secured the easiest divorce settlement in history. The realization. It didn't take long for reality to hit her. A few days later, I got a call. I didn't answer. Then another. And another. Finally, she left a voicemail. "Nathan, I need to talk to you. There seems to be a mistake." I smirked. "A mistake?" "No, Madeline. The mistake was underestimating me." I let her sit with the confusion for a while before finally answering. "What's the issue?" I asked casually. "What's the issue?" she snapped. "The accounts are empty, Nathan. Empty. The investments, where are they? The condo, where's the deed?" I let out a small laugh. "Oh, that? It was never mine. The condo was always under my friend Marcus's name. I was just renting it." Silence. Then, her voice dropped to a furious whisper. "You tricked me." "No," I corrected. "You tricked yourself." Lily's panic. The next call wasn't from Madeline. It was from Lily. "Dad," she started, her voice unusually soft. "Mom's freaking out. She says there's no money left." "That's right," I said simply. She let out a nervous laugh. "Come on, Dad. Stop messing around. You still have money, right?" I took a sip of my coffee before answering. "You tell me, where do you think my money went, Lily? Into your handbags? Your vacations? The car your mother bought you with my credit card?" She stammered. I didn't think." "No, you didn't," I interrupted. "Neither did your mother. And now you both get to live with the consequences." The silence on the other end was almost satisfying. For years, they had laughed at me, dismissed me, used me. Now, they were the ones left scrambling. Carter's downfall. I wasn't done yet. I had one last card to play. Carter, the man who had betrayed me, who had sat across from my wife in that restaurant, gloating about the years he had fooled me, was about to face his own reckoning. I had been collecting evidence for months. Every transaction, every shady business deal, every skeleton in his closet. And when the time was right, I sent it all to his ex-wife. She had no idea that her husband had an illegitimate child, that he had been funneling money into Madeline's lifestyle for years. But when she found out, she took everything. His house, his savings, his retirement fund. He was left with nothing. And just like that, the man who had thought he was untouchable was suddenly begging for help. The final move. When Madeline called me again, her tone had changed. She was no longer smug, no longer triumphant. She was desperate. "Nathan," she said quietly, "we need to talk." I leaned back in my chair. "Do we?" She hesitated. "I made mistakes. But you don't have to do this. You don't have to leave us like this." I smiled. The audacity. "Madeline," I said, my voice calm. "You left me a long time ago." She was silent. And then, for the first time in decades, she started crying. I let her feel every bit of the betrayal I had felt. Then, just as she had done to me so many times before, I hung up the phone. Checkmate. Madeline thought she had taken everything from me. But in the end, she was the one left with nothing. There's a certain kind of silence that comes when someone realizes they've lost everything. It's not the loud, dramatic outburst of someone throwing a fit. No, it's a heavy, suffocating silence, the kind that wraps around a person's throat, making it impossible to speak. I had spent 30 years providing for Madeline and Lily, pouring everything I had into a family that had never truly been mine. And now, they were finally facing the consequences of their betrayal. Madeline had walked into that divorce with confidence, convinced she was walking away with everything. She had bragged about it, laughed in my face, and expected me to crumble under the weight of her demands. She thought she had won, until she realized she had nothing. The bank account that vanished. It took 3 days before Madeline called me again. At first, I ignored her. I let her sit with the reality of her situation, let her feel the panic, the rising desperation as the realization sank in. Then, late one night, my phone buzzed. I smirked when I saw her name flash on the screen. I answered casually. Madeline. Her voice was tight, on the edge of controlled hysteria. What the hell did you do? I leaned back in my chair, sipping my drink. Whatever do you mean? The accounts, Nathan, she snapped. There's nothing left. Where did the money go? I laughed. She was finally catching up. Oh, that money? I said. That was my money, Madeline. And last I checked, I don't owe you a damn thing. She sucked in a sharp breath. That's not, you can't just. I can. And I did. She let out a harsh laugh, but I could hear the edge of fear creeping into her voice. I have nothing, Nathan. Nothing. You said I'd get everything. I did, I agreed. And you did. You got all the assets that were in my name. I gave you exactly what you asked for. Then, silence. Because she knew. She finally understood. I had given her everything that was worthless. The worthless inheritance. She had walked away from that divorce with a property that cost more to maintain than it was worth, bank accounts that had been drained before she ever touched them, and a pile of furniture that had once filled a high-rise condo she no longer had access to. I heard her sharp inhale over the phone. The house, she said quietly. We still have the house. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Oh, you mean the house you and Lily were so eager to claim? I asked. The one I never fought you on? She hesitated. Yes. I chuckled. Madeline, sweetheart, the house was never in my name. Dead silence. I let that sink in. Then, finally, she whispered, What? You heard me. You're lying. I'm not. And then it hit her. She never checked. She had been so focused on taking me down, so convinced she was the smarter one, that she never even thought to verify who actually owned the house. It was never mine to begin with. Which meant, it wasn't hers now either. Lily's meltdown. The next call came from Lily. I had been waiting for it. Dad? She started, trying to keep her voice calm, but I could hear the undercurrent of panic. Mom said there's an issue with the house. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Issue? No issue. It's just not yours. A pause. What do you mean, it's not ours? It was never mine, Lily. It belonged to Marcus. I was just renting it from him. The breath she sucked in was sharp. But you promised. I raised an eyebrow. I never promised you anything. Silence. Dad, please. We don't have anywhere else to go. For years, I had been nothing more than a walking wallet to her. For years, she had sided with Madeline, mocking me, belittling me, treating me like I was disposable. And now? Now she needed me. And I didn't give a damn. Carter's collapse. The final call came from Carter. I almost didn't pick up, but I was curious. What did a man with nothing left sound like? Nathan, he said, his voice strained. Carter, I greeted. To what do I owe the pleasure? You didn't have to do this. I smirked. Didn't I? His breath was shaky. You ruined me. No, Carter, I corrected. You ruined yourself. You told her, didn't you? His voice cracked. You told my wife. Of course I did, I said unfazed. And I made sure she had every bit of proof she needed to wipe you clean. He let out a bitter laugh. You think you won? I didn't even hesitate. I know I did. The final blow. In the end, Madeline and Lily had nowhere to go. The house. Gone. The bank accounts? Empty. The support system? Non-existent. Carter? Destroyed. I had given them everything they thought they wanted, and in doing so, I had taken away everything they actually needed. And me? I walked away free. For the first time in 30 years, I didn't owe anyone anything. I wasn't a husband anymore. I wasn't a father to a daughter who never saw me as one. I was just Nathan Carter. And I had never felt lighter. Madeline thought she had set me up for failure. But in the end, she had set herself up for ruin. And I had simply let her walk right into it. Betrayal is a funny thing. When you first experience it, it crushes you, leaves you gasping for air, questioning everything. But when you step back and truly see the people behind it, you realize that their betrayal says more about them than it ever did about you. Madeline and Lily thought they had outplayed me. They thought they had their future secured, their lives set up for easy luxury, while I was meant to rot in humiliation. But betrayal has a way of circling back, hitting the ones who dealt it far harder than they ever expected. And now, they were scrambling. The desperation begins. After realizing they had no money, no home, and no safety net, the real panic set in. The first time I saw Madeline after the divorce was in a lawyer's office, of all places. I had gone to finalize some last-minute paperwork when I spotted her sitting in the reception area. She looked different. The expensive glow she always carried was gone, replaced with tired eyes and the weight of reality sinking in. She must have felt my presence, because she turned, locking eyes with me. For a moment, there was silence. Then, she stood up and approached me. "Nathan," she said, her voice softer than I had heard in years. I raised an eyebrow. "Madeline." She hesitated. "Can we talk?" I tilted my head. "Talk? We had 30 years to talk, Madeline. You seemed perfectly fine making decisions without me before." She flinched, but to her credit, she didn't back down. "I know I messed up, but we don't have to hate each other." I let out a small chuckle. "Madeline, you don't get to rewrite the past now that things aren't working out for you." She shifted uncomfortably. "It's not just about me. It's about Lily. She's struggling." Oh, there it was. She wasn't here for herself, not entirely. She was here because she needed something. Because she had nothing left. I folded my arms, my expression blank. "Lily made her choice. She's still your daughter, Nathan." I raised an eyebrow. "Is she?" Madeline's breath hitched. She knew exactly what I meant. But I wasn't going to let her turn this into another emotional manipulation game. "Good luck, Madeline," I said simply, turning to walk away. She grabbed my arm. "Wait." I stared down at her hand until she released me. Then, without another word, I left. I had nothing left to say to her. Lily's realization. Lily called me a week later. I was expecting it. Her voice was shaky, uncertain. "Dad." I remained silent. "I know I haven't been great to you," she admitted. I almost laughed. Understatement of the century. She let out a slow breath. I don't know what to do. Mom is freaking out. Carter's a mess. And she hesitated. "I need help." There it was. Help. After years of ignoring me, of treating me like an ATM instead of a father, she suddenly needed help. I didn't respond. "Dad." I finally spoke. "Why now, Lily?" She was quiet for a moment. "I don't know." "That's a lie." She inhaled sharply. I guess I just thought you'd always be there." I closed my eyes briefly. "And when I was there, what did you do?" Silence. "You laughed at me." I continued. "You used me. You mocked me behind my back. And now, because life didn't work out the way you expected, I'm suddenly worth talking to." I could hear her trying to hold back tears. I was stupid. I let out a slow breath. "Yes, you were." She sniffled. "I don't have anywhere else to go, Dad." For a brief moment, I considered it. I thought about the little girl who used to run to me, the daughter I had once adored more than anything. But then I remembered. She had never really been mine. And even if she had made it very clear what she thought of me when she sided with Madeline. "I hope you figure it out," I said finally. "That's it," she whispered. "That's it." And then, for the first time in my life, I hung up on my daughter. Carter's rock bottom. Carter had always been a smug bastard. He carried himself like he was untouchable, like the world bent to his will. But when I saw him next, he was a shell of the man he used to be. His ex-wife had taken him to court and won. Every single hidden asset, every bit of wealth he thought he had secured, gone. His career, over. His reputation, destroyed. I saw him at a cafe one morning. He looked up, meeting my gaze, and for a split second, I saw something I had never seen in him before. Defeat. He swallowed thickly. "Nathan." I smirked. "Carter." He rubbed his face, looking exhausted. "I lost everything." I took a sip of my coffee. "I know." His eyes flashed with something. Regret? Anger? Maybe both. Was it worth it? I tilted my head. "You tell me. Was it worth 30 years of lies?" He had no answer. The final goodbye. A month after everything had settled, I got one last call from Madeline. I debated ignoring it. But curiosity won. I answered. "Nathan," she breathed. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I let out a dry chuckle. "For what?" "For everything," she said, and I could tell she meant it. "But the thing about apologies? They don't fix the past." I exhaled. "Madeline, we are never going to be what we were." "I know." I nodded to myself. "Then take care." And this time, when I hung up, I felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. Just peace. Freedom. For the first time in 3 decades, I was truly free. No more walking on eggshells. No more playing the fool. No more giving to people who never gave a damn about me. I had lost everything I thought mattered. And in doing so, I gained myself. Madeline, Lily, Carter, they had all betrayed me. But now, they were the ones left picking up the pieces. And me? I was finally alive. Betrayal destroys. It consumes, leaves ruins in its wake, and strips away everything false until all that's left is the raw, unfiltered truth. And the truth was simple. I had been blind for 30 years. But not anymore. Madeline and Lily were gone from my life, left to fend for themselves. Carter had lost everything. The people who had built their lives on lies were now drowning in them. And me? For the first time in my life, I was free. Their final fall. It didn't take long for the dust to settle. With no home, no assets, and no steady income, Madeline and Lily were forced to make difficult choices. At first, they tried staying with friends, but people tend to disappear when you have nothing left to offer. Madeline reached out to her sisters, the ones she had spent years bragging to about how she had secured her future by marrying a successful man. They refused to take her in. Lily, once the girl who had sneered at boring jobs, was forced to work at a cafe, serving people who once admired her expensive lifestyle. Carter? He disappeared completely. With his money stripped away, his reputation destroyed, and his health deteriorating, he had no one left. The last I heard, he had left the city, but I didn't bother to find out where. They had all expected to live the rest of their lives in comfort, funded by me. Instead, they had to fight for survival. And the best part? I didn't lift a single finger to make it happen. They had done this to themselves. New horizons. While they were scrambling, I was already miles ahead. After the divorce, I accepted an offer from Marcus, my oldest friend, to move abroad and join his expanding business in Bangkok. I had spent decades being tied down, sacrificing my dreams for a family that didn't deserve me. Now, I had no reason to stay. I sold everything I still owned, packed my bags, and left. The moment my plane touched down in Thailand, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. No more cold, silent dinners. No more fake smiles. No more being used. I was done living for others. I was finally living for myself. The phone call I didn't expect. It had been 6 months since I left when my phone rang. I was sitting on a balcony overlooking the city, a drink in my hand, feeling more at ease than I had in years. When I saw the name on the screen, I almost didn't answer. Lily. I let it ring. Then, curiosity got the better of me. I picked up. Lily. There was a long silence on the other end. Then, a deep inhale. Dad. Her voice was different. Not demanding. Not mocking. Just lost. I said nothing. She let out a shaky breath. I don't know what to say. I waited. I got a job, she continued. I work at a cafe. I remained silent. I make minimum wage, she admitted, almost as if it hurt to say. Mom and I were struggling. I let that sit for a moment. Are you happy? I finally asked. She let out a bitter laugh. No. I nodded. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you threw me away. I know. Her voice cracked. I sighed, staring out at the city. I wasn't cruel, but I also wasn't stupid. You made your choice, Lily. I did. Another pause. Then, the quietest whisper. And I regret it. That was the first time she had ever admitted it. It should have made me feel victorious, but all I felt was exhaustion. I had spent too many years caring for people who never cared for me. It was too late. I hope you figure things out, I said simply. She inhaled sharply. That's it. That's it. And for the second time in my life, I hung up on my daughter. Madeline's last plea. A few weeks later, the final call came. This time, it was Madeline. Nathan, she breathed. I stayed silent. I made mistakes, she admitted, her voice soft. I was selfish. And her breath hitched. I lost everything. For the first time in 3 decades, she sounded genuinely remorseful. But remorse didn't erase 30 years of betrayal. I closed my eyes. Madeline, I don't hate you. A pause. You don't. No, I said. But I also don't forgive you. Silence. We can fix this, she whispered. We can start over. We don't have to be enemies. I chuckled. We aren't enemies, Madeline. We're nothing. She let out a shaky exhale. You really won't give me another chance? I didn't hesitate. No. And just like that, the past was behind me. For good. The man I became. A year had passed since I left my old life behind. I had built something new. My career had flourished under Marcus's company, my days filled with work I actually enjoyed, surrounded by people who valued me. I had real friends, a real future, and not a single regret. One evening, Marcus and I sat on the rooftop of our office, sipping cold beers as we watched the sun dip below the skyline. "You ever think about them?" he asked casually. I took a slow sip, considering his question. Did I think about Madeline? Lily? Carter? Yes, but not with regret. I had spent 30 years trying to be a good husband, a good father. They threw that away. Now, they were living with the consequences. And me? I was happier than I had ever been. I turned to Marcus, smirking. Not anymore. And with that, I raised my glass. To new beginnings. To a life free of betrayal. To the man I had become. I used to believe my life was solid, built on hard work, stability, and a sense of control. That belief shattered the moment I stepped into the airport, but I didn't see it coming. Not then. It was a Sunday morning like any other, calm, predictable, structured. I had my routine. Wake up early, make a pot of coffee, check a few emails before the chaos of the day. My wife, Vanessa, was already on her phone, scrolling through Instagram, liking photos, replying to comments. Her morning routine was just as predictable, except hers revolved around social media and maintaining the illusion of our perfect family. I didn't argue. Not anymore. For years, I had played the part of the successful husband, a corporate strategist with a six-figure salary, a luxury home in Santa Monica, and a wife who looked like she walked out of a magazine cover. We had twin daughters, Sophie and Claire, who were 5 years old and full of life. They were my world, my anchor. But even as I got them ready that morning, brushing Claire's curls, helping Sophie find her favorite sneakers, I sensed something was off. Vanessa was too eager, too cheerful. "This trip is going to be amazing," she said, sipping her oat milk latte, not even looking at me. "We'll take so many pictures. The twins will love the Disney hotel." She spoke as if we were guests in our own life, as if the trip was more for her followers than for our family. I had grown used to that. The posed pictures, the curated perfection, the captions that never quite matched reality. I had once thought our love was real, but now, I wasn't sure. Still, I said nothing. I never said anything. I had learned a long time ago that silence was easier. As we packed, I glanced at the credit card statement on my phone, something I had started doing in secret. There it was again, designer purchases, spa treatments, private chauffeur services. The kind of spending that made me wonder where the money was coming from because I sure as hell hadn't approved it. But again, I let it go, for the sake of the family. By noon, we were ready to leave. Vanessa barely glanced at the twins as they excitedly clutched their backpacks, but she made sure to check her makeup in the hallway mirror before stepping out. I should have known. I should have seen it, the way she lingered by the door, checking her phone again and again. The way she smirked when I told her I'd drive separately to the airport since I had to pick up something from the office first. "You always have work, don't you?" she said with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. And yet, I brushed it off. I still believed we were leaving together. I didn't realize, in that moment, that Vanessa had already planned everything. I didn't know that while I was checking my emails one last time, she was boarding the plane without me. I didn't know that my daughters, the two little girls who trusted us to protect them, were about to be abandoned in an airport terminal while their mother flew off to paradise. If I had known, I wouldn't have wasted my time believing in the life we had built. Because by the time I walked into the airport, that life? It was already gone. The moment I stepped into Los Angeles International Airport, LAX, I felt the first prick of unease. It wasn't the usual pre-flight stress, the kind that comes from security lines and last-minute gate changes. No, this was something deeper. The airport was buzzing with travelers, families in matching vacation shirts, honeymooners taking selfies, kids dragging stuffed animals through the terminal. It was a scene of excitement, movement, anticipation. But for me, something felt wrong. I wheeled my suitcase to the check-in counter, pulled up my reservation on my phone, and handed over my passport. The airline employee, a young woman with tired eyes and a forced smile, typed something into her computer. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment too long. Then, she frowned. "Sir, your reservation isn't in the system." I blinked. "That's not possible. My wife booked it. We're flying out today, Hawaii, Family trip. More typing. More silence. Your reservation was canceled, she said finally. I let out a short laugh, waiting for the part where she fixed the mistake. But she didn't. Canceled? I repeated. There must be some kind of error. My wife, that's when she cut me off. Your wife has already boarded. The world slowed. I stared at her, my brain struggling to process the words. Vanessa boarded? Without me? I pulled out my phone, my hand suddenly unsteady, and opened my messages. There it was. A single text from Vanessa. You should be taking care of the kids. Attached was a photo that changed everything. My daughters, Sophie and Claire, sitting on a cold metal bench near the airport Starbucks, their little legs dangling over the edge. Alone, Sophie was clutching her pink teddy bear, the one she never slept without. Claire's face was blotchy, red, the telltale sign of a child who had been crying for too long. I forgot how to breathe. A ringing sound filled my ears. Blood pounded behind my temples. Sir, the airline employee asked, her voice muffled like she was speaking through water. Are you okay? I didn't answer. Because I wasn't. I turned and ran through the terminal like a madman. My mind was racing, my body moving on autopilot, scanning every bench, every seating area. I shoved past people, ignored the confused looks, the irritated muttering of travelers I bumped into. Then, Auntie Lynn? The small, broken voice cut through the noise. I spun around and saw them. Sophie and Claire, exactly where they were in the photo, sitting in the same spot, still abandoned, still alone. Claire sniffled and wiped her nose on her sleeve. Sophie's grip on the teddy bear was so tight her knuckles were white. I dropped to my knees in front of them. Daddy's here. Sophie exhaled, a shuddering breath, and threw herself into my arms. Claire followed, burying her face into my neck, her little body trembling against mine. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to lie, to tell them their mother was coming back, that this was a misunderstanding. But I couldn't. I couldn't form the words. I heard a voice behind me. Sir, is everything okay? I turned and saw an airport security officer, his expression a mix of concern and suspicion. He wasn't the only one watching. People were staring now. Travelers whispering, mothers clutching their own children a little tighter, airline staff exchanging glances. I must have looked insane, kneeling on the floor, clutching two sobbing little girls, my own face probably just as pale as theirs. No, not insane. Broken. The officer stepped closer. Sir, can I ask what's going on here? I opened my mouth, then hesitated. How was I supposed to explain this? That my wife, the woman I built a life with, the mother of my children, had just abandoned them? That while she was sipping champagne at 30,000 feet, I was on my knees, holding our daughters, wondering how the hell I was supposed to fix this. I swallowed hard. I need to file a report, I said, my voice hoarse. The officer nodded. Let's take you to the security office. We'll make sure the girls are taken care of. I lifted Sophie and Claire into my arms. They clung to me like I was the only thing holding them to this world. And maybe I was. As I followed the officer through the terminal, the truth finally hit me in full force. Vanessa wasn't coming back. Not for me. And not for them. The walk to the airport security office felt longer than any walk I had ever taken. Not because of the distance, but because of what it meant. Each step cemented the truth. Vanessa had abandoned Sophie and Claire. My mind kept trying to reject the thought, trying to make sense of it, but there was no logical explanation, no justification. The girls clung to me, their tiny hands fisting my shirt like I might disappear too. And I wouldn't blame them for thinking that. By the time we reached the security office, my breath was coming in short, controlled bursts. I had to hold it together. Not for myself, for them. The officer, a no-nonsense woman named Sergeant Dawson, gestured for us to sit. She crouched to the twins' level, offering them soft smiles. Hi there, sweethearts. Can I get you anything? Some hot chocolate? A snack? Claire didn't respond. She just pressed her face deeper into my chest. Sophie, ever so slightly braver, shook her head. Daddy, where's Mommy? She whispered, her voice small, fragile. My throat closed. I had no answer. Not one that wouldn't shatter them further. I swallowed, forcing my voice to stay even. We'll talk about that soon, baby. I promise. Sergeant Dawson sat across from me, tapping something into a tablet before looking up. Mr. Reed, we need to file an official report. Your wife, Vanessa, was the one who left the children alone? I exhaled sharply, pinching the bridge of my nose. Even saying it out loud felt surreal. Yes, I said finally. She boarded the flight to Hawaii without me and left them. Dawson's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes hardened. Disgust. It was the same look I had seen on the airline employee's face when she realized what had happened. The same look I would probably keep seeing. And you have no idea why she did this? I hesitated. I could lie. I could tell them I had no clue. But I did. Not the full picture, not yet, but enough. Vanessa had been spending money like it grew on trees. I had seen the warning signs. The unopened bills she stuffed into drawers, the way she changed the subject every time I mentioned finances, the designer handbags still in their boxes, untouched. Still, I hadn't imagined this. No, I said instead. I didn't know she was planning this. Dawson nodded, jotting down notes. Do you have someone who can take care of the girls while we investigate? I looked down at Sophie and Claire, still clinging to me like their lives depended on it. No. Even if I had someone, even if my mother wasn't on a church retreat halfway across the country, I wasn't leaving them with anyone else. They're staying with me. Dawson gave a small nod of approval, but there was something else in her expression. Pity. I need to make a few calls, she said, rising. Child Protective Services will need to be involved, but considering the circumstances, I doubt they'll push for separation. Good. Because I wouldn't let them. As Dawson stepped out of the room, I turned my attention back to my daughters. Claire had stopped crying, but her small hands still gripped my sleeve like a lifeline. Sophie was staring at the door, her bottom lip tucked between her teeth, thinking. I knew that look. She was trying to figure it out. Sophie, I murmured, tucking a strand of her hair behind her ear. What is it, baby? She looked up at me, her big blue eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place. Mommy said she'd be right back, she said softly. But she didn't come back. A sharp pain shot through my chest. How do you explain betrayal to a 5-year-old? How do you tell your daughter that the person who was supposed to love her most chose to leave? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. I pulled it out with one hand, still holding Claire close with the other. A new message flashed on the screen. From Vanessa. I tapped it open, my stomach twisting. The children are in your care now. The 529 plan documents are in the safe at home. This is our last chance. 529 plan? The college savings fund? What the hell was she talking about? My jaw clenched as I reread the words. Last chance. It sounded so final. Like she knew she wasn't coming back. Like she had planned this down to the last detail. The room felt smaller, suffocating. What the hell had Vanessa done? I didn't have time to process. Because then, another message came in. This time, it wasn't from Vanessa. It was a photo attachment. I opened it, and everything inside me went ice cold. It was a picture of Vanessa and a man. Not just any man. Marcus, her business partner. The one she always claimed was just a friend. They were sitting at a bar, clinking glasses of champagne, smiling like they didn't have a care in the world. Like they hadn't just abandoned their children. I had thought the worst had already happened. I stared at the photo for too long, my grip tightening around my phone until my knuckles turned white. Vanessa, smiling, champagne glass in hand, sitting beside Marcus, the man she swore was just a business friend. They were already in Hawaii, already celebrating, and she had sent it to me like a parting gift, a final, unapologetic middle finger. My stomach twisted. My heartbeat pounded in my ears, an erratic, angry rhythm. How could she abandon Sophie and Claire and then gloat about it? I forced myself to exhale, to push the raw, boiling rage down. Not now. Not in front of the girls. Claire had finally drifted off, her tiny body slumped against me, exhausted from crying. Sophie, however, was still wide awake. She watched me carefully, her big blue eyes filled with questions she was too afraid to ask. I had to hold it together. I tucked my phone away, smoothing her hair gently. Daddy? Her voice was quiet, hesitant. Are we still going on the trip? The words stabbed right through me. She still thought this was just a mistake, that her mother was coming back. I swallowed hard. Not today, baby. Her little brows furrowed, confusion flickering across her face. But Mommy said she was wrong. My voice came out harsher than I intended. Sophie flinched. I immediately softened. I mean, Mommy made a bad decision, but you're safe now. I promise. I didn't know if that was true, because at that moment, I had no idea what Vanessa's real plan was. But I was going to find out. I carried both girls out of LAX an hour later, stepping into the humid California air as my mind spun. Where do I even start? First, I needed to get them home. Then I needed answers. By the time I settled them into their beds, both too exhausted to argue, I was already making calls. The first was to my lawyer. No one divorces a man without his knowledge, abandons his kids, and steals his money without consequences. The second was to a financial investigator. Because if Vanessa had drained our daughter's education fund like her text hinted, then this was so much worse than I thought. I poured myself a stiff drink as I sat at the dining table, my laptop open. A part of me hesitated. Did I really want to see how deep this went? Or did I want to keep pretending that Vanessa had just made a mistake? No more pretending. I pulled up our bank statements. My breath caught in my throat. Gone. The 529 plan, meant for Sophie and Claire's college fund, drained to $1. Over $500,000, withdrawn in 3 months. My hands shook as I scrolled through the transactions. Luxury purchases. Chanel, Louis Vuitton, private jets, transfers to offshore accounts. I checked my personal savings. The account I had built before Vanessa ever came into my life. It had been untouched for years. Until last week. $75,000, gone. I stood up so fast my chair scraped the floor. I felt sick. This wasn't just reckless spending. This was theft. And then, another thought hit me. If Vanessa was capable of stealing from her own children, what else had she done? The next morning, I drove straight to Vanessa's office. Or at least, what used to be her office. Because when I arrived, the doors were locked. The company had shut down. I knocked anyway. A man, mid-40s, tired eyes, disheveled suit, opened it a crack. Sorry, we're closed, he said, rubbing his temples. I'm looking for Vanessa Reed. His expression changed, darkened. Yeah? So is everyone else? I frowned. What do you mean? He sighed, stepping back. You'd better come in. 20 minutes later, I sat in a half-empty boardroom, my mind reeling. Vanessa had lied about everything. The business she claimed was booming, it was bankrupt. Her business partner, Marcus? Not just her lover, her accomplice. They had been funneling money from investors, employees, even her own family. And now they were gone. I clenched my jaw, trying to process it all. She hadn't just left us. She had burned our entire life down before walking away. And worst of all, I had been too blind to see it. That night, as I tucked Sophie and Claire into bed, I sat with them a little longer. Sophie turned to me, sleepily. Mommy hasn't called yet. I forced a smile. No, baby. She hasn't. Claire blinked up at me. Is she coming home soon? I hesitated, then shook my head. No, sweetheart. Her little lips trembled. I stroked her hair. But I promise, I will never leave you. She sighed, curling up against my chest. I held them both. And in that moment, I made a vow. Vanessa thought she had one. She thought she had outplayed me. But she forgot one thing. She left her mess behind. And I was about to make damn sure she paid for it. The next morning, I was already awake before the sun rose. Not because I wanted to be, because I hadn't slept. The weight of what Vanessa had done pressed down on me like a physical force, making my head throb. The betrayal wasn't just personal anymore. It was criminal. The college fund? Gone. Our savings? Looted. Her company? Bankrupt. And Vanessa? Nowhere to be found. No more waiting. No more second-guessing. It was time to bring in the law. I was on the phone with my lawyer when the doorbell rang. I glanced at the clock. 7:42 a.m. Too early for anything good. I opened the door, and my stomach dropped. Two men in dark suits, badges clipped to their belts, stood on my doorstep. FBI. Mr. Reed? I nodded, stepping aside to let them in. One of them, Agent Keller, introduced himself. He was in his late 40s, sharp-eyed, with the kind of presence that told me he'd seen a lot. The other, Agent Dawson, was younger but just as serious. "We need to talk about your wife," Keller said, taking a seat at my dining table. I already knew where this was going. "I assume this is about the offshore accounts," I said, trying to keep my voice level. Dawson lifted an eyebrow. "So you're aware?" I nodded. "I checked our financial records. She drained everything. The kids' education fund, my personal savings, even her company's accounts." Keller exhaled sharply. "It's worse than that, Mr. Reed." I leaned forward. "How much worse?" Keller slid a file across the table. I opened it, and my hands tightened around the pages. Wire transfers, Cayman Islands, fake business expenses, fraudulent loans. Vanessa wasn't just spending recklessly. She was laundering money. I clenched my jaw. She knew exactly what she was doing. Dawson nodded. It was planned months in advance. The offshore accounts, the transfers, the escape. Escape. The word stung. She hadn't just abandoned the girls. She had abandoned her entire life. "Mr. Reed," Keller continued, "your wife's flight records show she arrived in Honolulu yesterday morning." I already knew that. "But what you don't know," Dawson added, "is that she and Marcus booked a one-way ticket to the Caribbean." I felt my stomach drop. "She wasn't just leaving me," I murmured. "She was disappearing." Keller gave me a hard look. "She wasn't planning to come back. Not for you. Not for the kids." A deep, cold rage settled in my chest. I had let this woman into my life. I had trusted her. I had built a family with her. And she had treated us like an inconvenience. She hadn't just left us. She had erased us. Keller tapped his pen against the table. "We're formally opening an investigation. At this point, Vanessa is facing multiple federal charges: wire fraud, money laundering, tax evasion, and, most importantly, child abandonment." I inhaled sharply. "What happens next?" Dawson answered. "We're issuing an international warrant. She won't be able to hide for long. She thinks she's untouchable," I muttered. Keller's mouth twitched into a smirk. "That's what they all think. Until the cuffs go on." The moment the agents left, I locked the door and stood there in the silence of my home. It didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a crime scene. Vanessa had walked out, but her mess was everywhere. I turned, my eyes landing on the couch where Sophie and Claire had curled up the night before. Their little shoes were still by the door, their drawings scattered across the coffee table. They had no idea how close they came to being left with nothing, how close I had come to losing them. Not a damn chance. Vanessa thought she could run. She thought she could disappear into paradise, while I was left to pick up the pieces. She had no idea who she was dealing with. I was going to bring her back, and when she returned, she'd wish she never left. I had spent the past 48 hours in a haze of legal meetings, police interviews, and sleepless nights. Every minute, every second, I waited for the inevitable call, the one that would tell me it was over, that Vanessa had been caught. When it finally came, I almost didn't believe it. I was in my kitchen, staring at the untouched cup of coffee in front of me, when my phone rang. The caller ID flashed. FBI, Agent Keller. I grabbed it immediately. "Tell me you have her." Keller's voice was steady, but I could hear the faintest edge of satisfaction. "We got her." I exhaled, my grip tightening around the phone. "Where?" "Hawaii. Hilton Hawaiian Village. We caught them having breakfast by the pool." The sheer audacity of it made my blood boil. Vanessa and Marcus, sipping mimosas, eating eggs Benedict, living their best life, while our daughters cried themselves to sleep. I pushed back from the table, pacing the kitchen. "Tell me how it went down." Keller didn't disappoint. It had all happened just hours ago. Vanessa and Marcus were seated at a poolside cabana, completely at ease, their sunglasses shielding them from the Hawaiian sun. They had spent the past day flaunting their new life, posting Instagram stories, drinking cocktails, pretending they hadn't just abandoned two innocent kids. What they didn't know was that the FBI had already secured an international warrant. And the moment Vanessa tapped her credit card at the hotel's front desk, it triggered an alert. The agents moved in fast. Vanessa was mid-sip when they surrounded the table. Vanessa Reed. Marcus Wright. FBI. You're under arrest. But I want you to know something. I waited. Most of the time, in these cases, the Los Angeles County Courthouse was packed. Reporters lined the hallways, cameras flashing as people jostled for a glimpse of the case that had gripped the city. The trial of Vanessa Reed. Once a wealthy socialite, now a disgraced criminal. I adjusted my tie and exhaled slowly. I hadn't slept much. The weight of this day had sat heavy on my chest, but I wasn't here for revenge. I was here for justice. For Sophie and Claire. For the daughters she had abandoned like an inconvenience. Inside the courtroom, Vanessa sat at the defense table, expression blank, posture perfect. She was trying to look calm, trying to act like she wasn't about to lose everything. I knew that look. It was the same one she used when she lied to my face. But there was something different now. The arrogance wasn't fully there anymore. Because this time, she wasn't in control. The prosecutor was relentless. They played the airport security footage for the jury, the moment Vanessa and Marcus walked away from Sophie and Claire. Not a glance back. Not a hesitation. Nothing. Just two parents abandoning their children like they were luggage. The jury stiffened. The courtroom fell into a dead silence. And for the first time, I saw Vanessa break. Her face barely moved, but I caught the way her jaw clenched, the flicker of panic in her eyes. She knew. This was the moment she lost. Then came her turn to speak. She stood slowly, smoothing her prison-issued beige uniform. The same woman who once wouldn't be caught dead wearing last season's fashion. Her voice, when she spoke, was soft, calculated. "Your Honor," she said, blinking rapidly, forcing tears. "I never wanted any of this. I lost control. I made mistakes, but I never meant to hurt my children." She turned toward me, her gaze pleading. "Jonathan, please." I didn't move, didn't blink, because I had heard this exact tone before. When she wanted money, when she wanted to manipulate a situation, when she wanted out. But today, there was no way out. The prosecutor stepped forward, voice sharp as a blade. "Mrs. Reed," she said, flipping through the files in front of her, "you're claiming this was all a mistake?" Vanessa nodded, playing the victim. "Yes." "Then let's review the facts." She turned to the jury. "You drained over $500,000 from your children's college fund." Vanessa's shoulders tightened. "You opened offshore accounts, forged signatures, stole money from your own mother-in-law." A murmur rippled through the spectators. Vanessa kept blinking, like she could cry her way out of this. But the prosecutor wasn't finished. "And then, when it all fell apart, you abandoned your daughters at an airport and tried to flee to the Caribbean. That was it. The final blow." The jury's faces hardened. The judge folded his hands, eyes narrowing. Vanessa knew. She was done. "Would the defendants please rise?" the judge said. Vanessa and Marcus stood. Her fingers trembled at her sides. Marcus, the coward, wouldn't even look up. The judge exhaled. "Vanessa Reed, you are hereby sentenced to 20 years in federal prison." A gasp swept through the room. Vanessa's body swayed. "No." Marcus' sentence came next, 15 years. But all I could focus on was Vanessa. Her hands gripped the table, her face pale. "Your Honor, please," she tried, voice shaking. The judge didn't even look at her. "The court is adjourned." The gavel slammed down. It was over. As the bailiff approached, Vanessa suddenly turned to me. "Jonathan," she whispered, real tears falling now. "Please." I stood, fixed my suit jacket, and walked out, because for the first time in our entire relationship, her words meant nothing. Outside, reporters swarmed. "Mr. Reed, do you have a statement?" I paused. Then, voice steady, I said, "This isn't a victory. This is justice." And then I went home, because there were two little girls waiting for me. And they were the only thing that mattered now. For the first time in a long time, I woke up without the weight of Vanessa pressing down on my chest. She was gone. Not just from my house. Not just from my life. From our future. She was sitting in a prison cell, and I was sitting at my kitchen table, watching the sunlight spill through the windows as Sophie and Claire giggled over their cereal. It was quiet. It was simple. It was everything we had lost. And it was finally ours again. The morning after the trial, I had made a decision. No more waiting. No more putting things off because life had been too chaotic, uncertain, broken. I was rebuilding. For them. For me. The first thing I did was transform the guest room. It had always been meant as a temporary space, a place for them to sleep while I figured things out. But this wasn't temporary anymore. This was home. I painted the walls, soft lilac for Sophie, sky blue for Claire. Let them pick their own bedding. Sophie chose stars, Claire picked unicorns. We built bookshelves. We hung glow-in-the-dark stickers on the ceiling. We filled the room with stuffed animals, coloring books, and warmth. By the time we were done, I stood in the doorway and just watched them. Sophie ran her hand over the quilt on her new bed, her face unreadable. Claire hugged her stuffed bear tight, eyes wide. Finally, Sophie looked up. Is this really ours? Her voice was small, hopeful. I knelt beside her, placing my hand over my heart. Forever. That night, I tucked them in, pressing a kiss to each of their foreheads. Claire reached for my hand. Daddy? I squeezed her tiny fingers. Yeah, baby? Her voice was sleepy, barely above a whisper. We don't have to leave, right? My chest tightened. I smoothed a strand of hair from her face. Never. Sophie stirred, blinking up at me. Even if Mommy comes back? I swallowed hard. She's not coming back. Claire's lips pressed together. Good. Sophie didn't say anything, but she smiled. And I knew. They finally felt safe. The biggest change wasn't the house. It wasn't even the legal custody papers I signed the next day, making it official. It was me. I had spent years convincing myself that working hard was enough. That making money, providing a house, sending them to good schools, that was what made me a good father. But now I was learning the small things. I figured out how to braid Claire's hair, badly, at first. I learned that Sophie's favorite sandwich had to be cut into star shapes, no crusts. I showed up to school pickup every day. Because I wasn't just the man who paid the bills anymore. I was Dad. A few weeks later, I got a letter. From Vanessa. I stared at the envelope for a long time. Then I threw it in the trash. Because our story? It wasn't about her anymore. It was about us. And it was just beginning. A year ago, my world collapsed. I stood in an airport, staring at a message from my wife. A message that told me she had abandoned our daughters. I spent months picking up the pieces, unraveling the lies, watching the woman I once trusted turn into someone I didn't recognize. And now I was free. Vanessa was gone. Marcus was gone. The trials, the investigations, the media frenzy, all of it was over. Life had finally settled into something simple, something normal. And then, one morning, my phone rang. And just like that, the past came knocking again. I was in the kitchen, making breakfast, when the call came in. The girls were at the table. Claire was dunking her toast in syrup. Sophie was coloring on a napkin, arguing with herself over which color to use. It was ordinary. Perfect. I glanced at my phone and felt a chill run down my spine. Los Angeles Correctional Facility. I hesitated. For a full 10 seconds, I considered letting it go to voicemail. But some part of me, the part that needed to know, forced me to pick up. I pressed the phone to my ear. Jonathan Reed. The voice on the other end was calm, official. Mr. Reed, we're calling to inform you that your ex-wife, Vanessa Reed, has been granted parole. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The world around me felt too quiet. Parole? I repeated, my voice steady, controlled. Yes, sir. She was released this morning. I felt something inside me harden. I had known this day would come. Vanessa was too good at playing the victim. Too good at convincing people she was just a woman who made a mistake. But I wasn't the same man she had left behind. Not anymore. 3 days later, she showed up at my doorstep. I had known she would. I had been waiting. When I saw her step out of the car, I barely recognized her. Gone were the designer clothes, the expensive jewelry, the perfect hair. She wore a plain gray dress, her blonde hair dull, her face bare and tired. She looked small, and for the first time, I saw her for what she truly was. Weak, powerless, a shadow of the woman who once ruled my life. She hesitated for a moment, then stepped forward. "Jonathan." I didn't say a word. She swallowed, glancing at the house. "Are they inside?" I saw the flicker of hope in her eyes. I crushed it. "They don't want to see you." Her face twisted. "Jonathan, please. They're my daughters." I let out a slow breath, then stepped forward, lowering my voice. "No," I said quietly. "They were your daughters. You lost that right the day you walked away from them." Tears welled in her eyes. You weren't sorry when you drained their college fund. You weren't sorry when you booked a one-way flight to the Caribbean. And you sure as hell weren't sorry when you sent me a picture of them sitting alone in an airport." Her lips trembled. "You weren't sorry until you got caught?" She shook her head, her voice barely above a whisper. "I made a mistake. I was scared." I clenched my jaw. "No," I said. "You were selfish." She tried again. "I just want to see them." I didn't move. I didn't blink. Because this was the moment I had been waiting for. I had spent years trapped under her control, believing that I was powerless, believing that I had to bend to her will. Not anymore. I looked her in the eyes and said the words I should have said a long time ago. "Go." She stiffened. "You can't do this." I stepped closer. "Go, Vanessa." She hesitated. One last attempt to read me, to find a weakness. But there was nothing left for her here, and she knew it. Finally, she turned, walked back to the car, didn't look back, and as I watched her drive away for the last time, I felt nothing. Not anger, not regret, not relief, just peace. That night, I sat on the couch with Sophie and Claire, watching a Disney movie. Claire curled up against my side. "Daddy?" "Yeah, baby?" She yawned. "We'll always be together, right?" I kissed the top of her head. "Always." Sophie smiled, squeezing my hand. And as I sat there, surrounded by the only family that mattered, I knew one thing for sure. Vanessa was gone. But we were just getting started. I still remember the moment like it happened in slow motion. I walked through the towering glass doors of NeuroSync, my company, my empire, only to find a line of security guards waiting for me. Their blank stares were unreadable, but their stance told me everything I needed to know. I wasn't welcome here anymore. At first, I thought it was a mistake, some kind of misunderstanding. Maybe one of the junior executives had overstepped their authority. Maybe Lillian had forgotten to inform them that I, the co-founder, was coming in today. But then I saw her. Lillian stood at the head of the long conference table in the executive boardroom, flanked by her hand-picked board of directors. She didn't flinch when our eyes met. No hesitation, no guilt, just cold calculation. The realization hit me like a freight train. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. This was planned. The security guard stepped forward, their presence thick with unspoken authority. "Mr. Carter, you need to come with us." The words rang in my ears, but I barely registered them. My wife, the woman I built this company with, the woman I loved, was standing there with her arms folded, her lips curled into something between amusement and indifference. The boardroom was silent, a sea of expensive suits and carefully practiced neutrality. Some of them glanced away, pretending to be engrossed in their laptops. Others sat perfectly still, their gazes locked on me like I was a specimen under a microscope. Lillian's voice cut through the tension like a razor. "You're nothing without me." The silence turned into a vacuum. I heard the words. I felt them. But it took a second for my mind to process that she had actually said them. I blinked. "What?" She didn't hesitate, didn't waver. "You're nothing without me," she repeated, her voice calm. "This company is mine. Always has been. And now, so is its future. You've become a liability, Marcus. It's time to move on." My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. My fingers twitched at my sides, every muscle in my body coiling. I wanted to shout, to argue, to remind her that NeuroSync wouldn't even exist without me. But I didn't. I had seen this look in her eyes before. The look she gave when she was sealing a deal, when she was crushing the opposition. Except this time, I was the opposition. I exhaled through my nose, forcing my pulse to steady. You really think you can just erase me? Her lips twitched upward. I already have. The guards moved in, stepping closer, their unspoken command clear: leave or be forced out. My mind raced. I could argue, make a scene, demand an explanation in front of the board. But that's exactly what she wanted me to do, to beg, to lash out, to prove her point. Instead, I smiled. Not the kind of smile she expected. Not the smile of a man who had just lost everything. No, it was the kind of smile you give when you're holding a secret that no one else knows. Lillian didn't know about the patent. She didn't know that I held the rights to NeuroSync's most valuable asset, the AI system that powered its entire ecosystem. So, I turned on my heel, straightened my suit, and walked toward the exit. But before I stepped out, I paused, glanced over my shoulder, looked her straight in the eye. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. She let out a short, dismissive laugh. Get him out of here. The guards flanked me as I made my way down the hall, their presence unnecessary. I wasn't going to fight. I wasn't going to plead. No, I was going to burn everything she built to the ground. The moment I stepped out of the glass doors, the morning sun hit my face, warm and blinding. A normal man would have felt defeated, humiliated. But me? I felt something entirely different. Liberated. Lillian thought she had one. She thought she had stripped me of everything. She had no idea. By the time she realized what I had done, it would already be too late. It's strange how betrayal doesn't hit you all at once. It seeps in, slow, creeping, like water finding its way through the cracks. You don't even realize how deep it's gone until one day, the foundation collapses, and you're left wondering how you didn't see it sooner. Looking back, I should have known. I should have seen the way Lillian operated, how she calculated every move long before she made it. But back then, I wasn't her enemy. I was her partner. At least, that's what I thought. I remember the first time I met her. She wasn't the ruthless executive the world knows today. She wasn't standing on the cover of business magazines, flashing that perfect, manufactured smile. No, back then, she was hungry, desperate, even. Her startup, NeuroSync, was failing. It had all the branding, the funding, the marketing, but none of the actual substance. Investors were losing faith. The product was a mess. She had connections, sure, but connections don't mean much when you don't have anything worth selling. And that's where I came in. I was a software engineer. A nobody, really. Just another tech guy who had spent years pouring his soul into something that no one else understood. An AI-driven system, far more advanced than anything on the market. A neural network that could optimize, adapt, and rebuild itself in real time. It was a passion project, something I had built in my dimly lit apartment, coding through the nights when everyone else was asleep. I didn't care about fame. I didn't care about money. I just wanted to build something that worked. And Lillian? She saw it. I was at a small tech summit, barely managing to scrape enough money together for a ticket. While others were pitching flashy, hollow ideas, I was sitting at a booth with a cheap laptop, showing what my system could do. I remember the moment her eyes locked onto the screen. She didn't approach right away. She watched, waited, and when the crowd around me thinned, she finally walked up, arms crossed, voice smooth and deliberate. You built this? It wasn't an empty question. It was assessing, sizing me up. I nodded. I think we need to talk. That conversation lasted hours. She asked real questions, not just about the software, but about me, what I wanted, what my end goal was. And I, like a fool, told her the truth. I don't care about recognition. I just want this to be used. She smiled. Not the polite kind. Not the thank you for your time kind. It was the kind of smile that sees opportunity. You have the brains, she said. I have the resources. Together, we could change everything. It was the perfect pitch. She told me about NeuroSync, how her company had the infrastructure but was missing the backbone. The technology that would make it truly revolutionary. We can build something unstoppable, she said. But I need you. I believed her. And for the first few years, it felt like we were equals. We worked insane hours, side by side, refining the software, pitching to investors, signing deals that turned NeuroSync into something massive. Somewhere along the way, the professional partnership became something deeper. We got married before the company even hit its first billion. It felt natural. It felt right. It felt like we were sealing our commitment, not just to each other, but to the empire we were building. NeuroSync wasn't just a company. It was our child, the thing we had built together, the thing we were going to share forever. Or so I thought. The warning signs weren't obvious at first. Little things. Lillian started doing press interviews alone. She brushed off my presence in meetings, letting investors believe I was just some behind-the-scenes engineer instead of her co-founder. And then, the language changed. It stopped being our company. It became her company. When I started NeuroSync, I knew we were going to revolutionize the industry. The first time she said it in a board meeting, I actually laughed. We, Lillian, we started it. She had just smiled. Of course. You know what I mean. I brushed it off. It was just wording. What did it matter? We were a team. We were married. Why fight over something so small? But small things add up. Over time, they turn into something bigger. And then one day, you wake up and realize you don't recognize the person sleeping next to you. The first major deal she signed without me was when I should have seen it coming. A multi-million-dollar partnership with a government agency. I found out through a press release. The official company website had stopped listing me as a co-founder. My title had been reduced to lead developer. The board no longer consulted me before major decisions. Lillian had quietly restructured everything so that I had no real power left. And then came the biggest mistake of my life. We should consolidate everything under one name, she had said, swirling wine in her glass as we sat in our penthouse. It makes us stronger, more stable. What do you mean? I asked, already feeling something cold settle in my stomach. Merging our shares. The board thinks it would be more efficient. Why would they think that? She had waved a hand dismissively. Legal stuff. Nothing serious. We'll still share everything, Marcus. What's yours is mine, and what's mine is yours. I should have questioned it. I should have asked why she was suddenly so eager to put everything under her control. But I didn't. Because I trusted her. Because I was a fool. And so, I signed the documents. I signed away my stake in the company. My official ownership. My control. And that was the moment everything shifted. Lillian smiled as she kissed me on the cheek. See? We're a team. This just makes things cleaner. I remember holding the pen a second too long before setting it down. Something in the back of my mind told me I had just made the biggest mistake of my life. And I had. Because from that moment on, I wasn't her partner. I was just an employee. A replaceable asset. And soon, she would make that very clear. Betrayal is a strange thing. It doesn't always come in a single, dramatic moment. Sometimes, it builds like a slow-moving storm, creeping up in the background until it's too late to run for cover. By the time I realized what Lillian had done, I was already drowning in it. She had taken everything, the credit, the control, the company. She had rewritten history, stripping my name from NeuroSync's legacy, transforming me from co-founder to just another engineer. But what she didn't realize, what no one at that damn boardroom table realized, was that I had seen it coming. And I had prepared for it. When I first built NeuroSync, I wasn't thinking about power. I wasn't thinking about boardroom battles or executive takeovers. I was thinking about the technology, the thing I had spent years perfecting in my small apartment, surviving on caffeine and sheer obsession. It wasn't just software. It was a living system, an AI-driven network capable of self-adaptation. And because I knew how fragile the tech world was, how quickly companies could shift, partnerships could break, and alliances could turn into wars, I built something extra. Something hidden. A kill switch. Not a backdoor. Not some dramatic, Hollywood-style, shut everything down button. No, this was a patent. Filed under my name. A legal, ironclad document that ensured that no matter how big NeuroSync became, no matter who tried to claim ownership of it, the core of its software, its brain, its beating heart, belonged to me. The patent covered every major algorithm that made NeuroSync unique. Without it, the company had no product. Without it, every contract, every agreement they had with investors and clients was worthless. I had filed it in secrecy long before NeuroSync hit its first major funding round. Not out of paranoia, but out of caution. I knew how this industry worked. I had seen too many inventors, too many engineers robbed of their own creations. I wasn't about to let that happen to me. But even after all that planning, I had hoped, really hoped, I would never have to use it. That changed the day Lillian ordered security to escort me out of my own company. I should have been furious. I should have fought. I should have shouted across that boardroom, reminded them that I was the reason they were even sitting in those overpriced leather chairs. But I didn't, because I knew something they didn't. So when the security guards escorted me out, I didn't resist. I didn't beg. I didn't even look back. I walked out with the calm of a man who knew exactly what was coming next. As I stepped into the elevator, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A notification from my personal email. Patent confirmed. Renewal approved. I smiled. Lillian had spent years erasing me from NeuroSync's history. She had rewritten the story, cutting me out like I was just some disposable extra in her rise to power. She thought she had one. She thought I was gone. But what she didn't know was that I owned the one thing she couldn't steal from me. And now, I was going to use it. The first strike, revoking their rights. I didn't waste any time. That night, as I sat in my apartment with a glass of whiskey in one hand and my laptop in the other, I did what Lillian never saw coming. I revoked NeuroSync's right to use my patented technology. It took 5 minutes. A simple legal submission. A few lines of text. A confirmation email. And just like that, NeuroSync, the billion-dollar company my wife had stolen from me, no longer had a product. The next morning, it started. The first call came from an old colleague, someone who had been loyal to me before Lillian started restructuring everything to squeeze me out. "Marcus, what the hell is going on?" "Good morning to you too," I said, sipping my coffee. "NeuroSync's AI is locked. We're getting notifications saying the company no longer has legal rights to the system. Clients are calling, saying they can't access their platforms. The whole thing is shutting down. What the hell did you do?" I smiled, reminding them who built it. Then the news started spreading. First, internally, engineers scrambling, IT teams frantically trying to restore access, thinking it was just some system glitch. Then, the board found out. Investors started demanding answers. And finally, Lillian found out. At 6:07 a.m., my phone rang. "Lillian." I let it ring. Once. Twice. Then, finally, I answered. "Marcus," she snapped. No greeting. No fake warmth. Just panic. "Something's wrong with the system. We can't access anything. The board is losing their minds. I know you did something. Tell me what the hell is happening." I leaned back in my chair, enjoying the rare sound of fear in her voice. "Good morning, Lillian. How's your day going? Don't play games with me. The AI is rejecting every executive login. We can't run updates. We can't process external requests. If we don't fix this, we're going to lose millions." "What did you do?" I let a slow smile spread across my face. "Nothing personal, sweetheart. Just business." She exhaled sharply. I could almost hear her grinding her teeth on the other end. "Marcus, whatever you did, undo it. Now." I took a slow sip of my coffee. "I don't think so." Silence. And then, softer, more dangerous, she asked, "You think you can take the company back?" I let out a short laugh. "I don't need to take it back, Lillian. I just needed to remind you who really owns it." The silence stretched longer this time. Because now, she understood. She had spent years building an empire on a stolen foundation, and I had just pulled the ground out from beneath her feet. I lowered my voice, letting my words sink in. "Tell the board I said hello." Then, I hung up. By the time she landed in her office, the damage was done. The system was in lockdown. Clients were pulling contracts. Stockholders were dumping shares. And Lillian, the woman who thought she had beaten me, was finally realizing the truth. She had spent years trying to erase my name from NeuroSync's history. Now, I was going to erase NeuroSync from existence, brick by brick, line by line, until there was nothing left but ashes. I didn't go home that night. I had no reason to. The penthouse Lillian and I had once shared felt more like a museum now, a carefully curated display of her success, where my presence had been reduced to an afterthought. No, I needed to be somewhere else, somewhere quiet, somewhere where I could think, where I could plan. So I drove to the one place that was still undeniably mine, a small, private office in a nondescript building downtown. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't luxurious, but it was functional. More importantly, it was where I had stored everything Lillian thought she had taken from me. I powered up my laptop, the familiar glow of the screen illuminating the dark room. The hum of the cooling fans filled the silence as I typed in the login credentials for my personal development server, a server Lillian didn't know existed. The moment I gained access, I exhaled. The patent files were still there, untouched, exactly where I had left them. Lillian had spent years convincing herself that NeuroSync belonged to her, that she was its architect, its mastermind, its sole ruler. But she had made a fatal mistake. She had forgotten who built it from the ground up. She had forgotten that the core of everything, the software, the security, the very lifeblood of her empire, was still mine. And now, she was about to find out exactly what that meant. The first strike. Revoking the patent wasn't difficult. It took less than 10 minutes. A simple legal submission, a few keystrokes, a final confirmation click. And with that, NeuroSync's biggest asset, the AI system that powered its entire ecosystem, was no longer legally theirs to use. I leaned back in my chair, watching as the system updated in real time. The software that had once been the foundation of Lillian's empire was now locked away, its licensing removed, its core functionality restricted. For the moment, NeuroSync would still run as normal. But in a few hours, when the system automatically refreshed, everything would change. And Lillian? She had no idea. 6:07 a.m. The first wave of panic. The phone rang. I didn't even need to check the caller ID. Lillian. I let it ring. Once. Twice. Then, finally, I picked up. Her voice was frantic, her usual icy composure nowhere to be found. Marcus, she snapped. No greeting, no pretense. Just pure panic. Something's wrong with the system. We can't access anything. The board is losing their minds. I know you did something. Tell me what the hell is happening. I smiled. This was a new tone from her. Gone was the smug, untouchable CEO who had ordered me out of her boardroom. This was a woman desperate for answers. Good morning, Lillian, I said, leaning back in my chair. How's your day going? Cut the bullshit, Marcus, she snapped. I don't have time for this. The AI is rejecting every executive login. We can't push updates, we can't access the back end, and the clients. Asterisk, she stopped herself, exhaling sharply. Fix it. I let the silence stretch between us, long enough for her to start doubting, to start realizing that she was no longer in control. Then, finally, I said it. I revoked your rights. For a second, she didn't speak. I could practically hear her processing what I had just said. You what? You heard me, I said, my voice calm. You and NeuroSync no longer have legal rights to use my technology. She let out a sharp breath, like she had just been punched in the stomach. You can't do that. I chuckled. Actually, I can. And I did. The silence on the other end of the line stretched longer this time. Then, finally, she hissed, You're bluffing. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. Check your system logs, Lillian, I said smoothly. Check your client contracts. Check the patents you thought you owned. I waited. Listened. She wasn't speaking, but I knew exactly what was happening. She was scrolling through her files, refreshing her dashboards, trying, desperately, to find a way out of the reality that was now sinking in. And then, it hit her. You son of a bitch. I smiled. Now, Lillian. No need for name-calling. This is just business, right? Her breathing was sharp, uneven. You think you can take the company back? No, I said simply. I don't want it back. I just wanted to remind you who really owns it. Another long silence. And then, softer, more dangerous. If you don't undo this, you'll regret it. I laughed. Lillian, you stole everything from me. My company, my work, my name. You erased me. And you thought I was just going to disappear? I let my voice drop lower. No, Lillian, you're the one who's about to disappear. And then, I hung up. 7 a.m., the full collapse begins. By the time Lillian made it into her office, the damage was already done. The system had locked them out completely. Client requests? Denied. Software updates? Frozen. The AI? Unresponsive. Every function that had made NeuroSync a billion-dollar empire was now a corpse in a suit. The board of directors scrambled for answers, but there were none. And the investors? The moment they realized NeuroSync had no legal claim to its own software, they bailed. Stock prices plummeted. Lawsuits started piling up. By noon, news outlets were already reporting the crisis. Tech giant NeuroSync faces unprecedented shutdown amid patent dispute. CEO Lillian Carter scrambles to recover as company's core technology is revoked. For years, Lillian had painted herself as the visionary, the genius, the sole architect of NeuroSync's success. Now, the world was finally seeing the truth. 10 a.m., the board's last attempt. My phone rang again. Not Lillian this time. The board. They were panicked, desperate, trying to negotiate, trying to fix what had already been destroyed. Marcus, one of them started, his voice strained but forced into professional neutrality. We need to talk. I bet you do. Listen, whatever personal grievances you have against Lillian. I cut him off with a laugh. Personal grievances? You mean like getting thrown out of my own company? Having my work stolen? Being erased from history? Silence. Then, finally, what do you want? I leaned back in my chair, letting the weight of the moment settle. Then, calmly, I said, nothing. I just wanted you all to know what it feels like to lose everything. And with that, I ended the call. As the chaos unfolded, I sat back and watched. Lillian had spent years rewriting the past. Now, she was watching her future disintegrate. And the best part? This was just the beginning. There's a specific kind of silence that follows a disaster. Not the silence of peace, not the silence of waiting, but the silence of realization. The moment when people stop fighting, stop denying, and finally understand that they've lost. That's the silence I woke up to. The night before, I had gone to bed early, sleeping better than I had in months. I knew what was coming. I knew what the morning would bring. I let it happen naturally. I didn't check my phone. I didn't refresh the news. I didn't need to. Instead, I sat in my kitchen, made myself a slow, careful cup of coffee, and waited. And then, at exactly 6:07 a.m., my phone rang. I didn't answer immediately. I let it ring once, twice. Then, finally, I picked up. And there it was, Lillian's voice, frantic, stripped of every ounce of confidence. Marcus, she snapped, her breath uneven. No greeting. No fake pleasantries. Just panic. What the hell did you do? I took a slow sip of my coffee before responding. Good morning, Lillian. How's your day going? She ignored me. The system is down, Marcus. Everything is rejecting our credentials. We can't log in. We can't run updates. The AI isn't responding. Clients are calling in, demanding answers. I know you did something. Tell me how to fix it. There it was. Not undo it. Not you can't do this. Not yet, at least. First, she wanted to understand. She wanted to grasp just how bad it was before she figured out how to clean it up. That was Lillian's way. She never panicked until she had all the information. Fix it, I repeated, feigning confusion. I don't work for NeuroSync anymore, remember? You made sure of that. Marcus. Oh, wait. I cut her off. Maybe you should check the legal department. They should have an update for you. The sharp inhale on the other end of the line told me she had already checked. And she didn't like what she found. You revoked the patent, she whispered. I smiled. That's right. A long silence. I waited, giving her time to sit in it, to process the fact that she had just lost everything. You can't do this. There it was. The bargaining stage. Actually, I said, I can. And I did. You're sabotaging the company, Marcus, she snapped, her voice breaking. Do you know how much damage this is doing? How much money is on the line? Oh, I'm well aware, I said, leaning back in my chair. I built the damn thing, remember? Another silence. And then, softer, more dangerous, she said, if you don't undo this, you'll regret it. I laughed. Lillian, let me remind you of something. My voice was calm, measured, deadly. You stole everything from me. My company, my work, my name. You erased me, threw me out like I was nothing. I let the words sink in before delivering the final blow. Did you really think I was just going to disappear? Her breath hitched, just for a second. She had nothing left to say. Tell the board I said hello. And then, I hung up. I didn't check my phone after that. Didn't need to. By the time I finished my second cup of coffee, I knew exactly what was happening at NeuroSync's headquarters. Full-blown chaos. The system was in complete lockdown. Every executive-level login rejected, every internal function disabled. The AI? Frozen. Updates? Blocked. Everything that had made NeuroSync the industry leader? Useless. And the worst part? Clients were noticing. The companies that NeuroSync had signed multi-million-dollar contracts with were now realizing that their systems were failing. Investors, once blindly confident in Lillian's leadership, were starting to panic. By 8:15 a.m., the company's stock had dropped 18%. By 8:30 a.m., that number had doubled. By 9 a.m., investors were already pulling out. The board was in a frenzy. They had put their faith in Lillian, believing she was the genius behind NeuroSync's success. Now, they were seeing the truth. And Lillian? She was watching her empire collapse in real time. 9:30 a.m., the board's first move. My phone rang again. Not Lillian this time. One of the board members. I let it ring. I wanted them to stew in it. Finally, I answered. Marcus. The voice on the other end was strained, careful, measured. We seemed to have encountered a situation. I smirked. You don't say. The system is down. So I've heard. A long pause. Then, we need your help. There it was. The first crack in their arrogance. My help? I repeated. Now, that's interesting. Because just last week, you all let Lillian push me out like I was some junior engineer. Now, suddenly, I'm important? We can negotiate, the voice on the other end said quickly. We're willing to restore your position. Bring you back as. Oh, I don't think so. I cut him off. Silence. Let me be very clear. I continued, my voice ice cold. I don't want my position back. I don't want NeuroSync back. The company you all chose to betray? It doesn't exist anymore. Another silence. Then, finally, what do you want? I smiled. Nothing. I just wanted you all to know what it feels like to lose everything. And with that, I hung up again. 10 a.m., Lillian's breaking point. I expected another call from Lillian, but it never came. Not yet. Instead, she showed up at my door. Unannounced. Desperate. For the first time since this entire thing started, I saw her without the armor. No carefully curated confidence. No practiced smirk. No polished, calculated arrogance. She was pale. Her hands were clenched into fists. Her lips were pressed so tightly together. They were almost white. And her eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, were now filled with something else. Fear. I let the moment stretch before I spoke. To what do I owe the pleasure? She exhaled sharply, her jaw tightening. Let me in. I didn't move. No. Her nostrils flared. Marcus, I don't have time for this. Neither do I. I crossed my arms, watching as she struggled to hold herself together. We can fix this, she said finally. There is no we anymore, Lillian. For the first time in her life, she looked unsure. And I was just getting started. There's a moment in every disaster when people finally understand that there's no fixing it. Not through quick patches. Not through damage control. Not through carefully crafted PR statements. That moment had arrived for NeuroSync. By the time Lillian showed up at my door, her empire was already burning. But she wasn't here to admit defeat. No, Lillian didn't know how to lose. She thought she could talk her way out of this, the same way she had talked her way into power, into money, into convincing an entire industry that she was the genius behind NeuroSync's success. She still believed that she could fix it. She still believed she could fix me. But I had already decided. She wasn't getting out of this alive. Not her company. Not her reputation. And definitely not her pride. She was standing at my doorstep, looking at me like she was trying to find an angle. Something she could use. Something she could manipulate. Marcus, we can fix this. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Fix what? I asked, pretending to be confused. You made it very clear I had no place in NeuroSync. You had security drag me out of my own boardroom. You told me I was nothing without you. So what, exactly, are we fixing? Her lips pressed together so tightly that for a second, I thought she might crack a tooth. You've made your point, she said, inhaling sharply. Congratulations. You got your revenge. Now let's be rational adults and clean up this mess before we both lose everything. I almost laughed. Before we both lose everything. Like I was the one with something left to lose. Like she hadn't already taken everything from me. I tilted my head, studying her. And what, exactly, do you think I want? She hesitated. That told me everything I needed to know. She had no idea. She had spent so long assuming she had complete control over me, over my emotions, my ambitions, my entire life, that she had never even considered what would happen if I decided to burn it all down. And now? Now she was looking into the eyes of the man she had underestimated. I let her sit in that silence for a long moment before I answered. I don't want anything, Lillian. Her brow furrowed. What? You thought I was going to beg to come back? That I was going to negotiate? That I'd want to salvage what's left of your company? I took a slow step forward, watching as she fought the instinct to step back. No, Lillian, I said, my voice cold. I don't want NeuroSync back. I want you to watch it burn. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed hard. And for the first time since this war started, I saw real fear in her eyes. Because she finally understood. This wasn't about leverage. This wasn't about me trying to force my way back into the company. This was personal. And I wasn't going to stop until there was nothing left of what she built. By the time Lillian left my doorstep, the damage had already spread far beyond NeuroSync's walls. Stock prices had plummeted nearly 50% in just a few hours. Investors were pulling out faster than the company could react. And the media? Oh, the media had smelled blood in the water. News headlines were everywhere. Tech empire in freefall. NeuroSync faces unprecedented shutdown. CEO Lillian Carter scrambles to recover amid crisis. The true genius behind NeuroSync? Insiders reveal the man erased from company history. That last one? That was my personal favorite. Because for years, Lillian had spent every ounce of effort making sure the world forgot my name. And now? Now, the world was finally remembering who built NeuroSync in the first place. Not Lillian. Me. By now, the board had turned on her. Not because they suddenly realized they had backed the wrong person. Not because they had any loyalty to me. No. Because money was on the line. Because the investors were furious, the clients were pulling out, and their entire careers were now at risk. I wasn't in the boardroom when it happened, but I didn't need to be. I knew how these people worked. I could picture the scene perfectly. Lillian standing at the head of the table, trying to maintain control, her voice sharp, her posture stiff. The board members shifting uncomfortably in their seats, stealing glances at their phones, watching the stock drop in real time. Then, finally, the chairman clearing his throat. Lillian, he would have said, in that careful, measured tone executives use when they're about to betray you. We need to discuss your leadership position. And just like that, she was done. 11:30 a.m., the call that changed everything. By 11:30 a.m., I was sitting on my couch, watching the financial news when my phone rang. Not Lillian this time. The board. I let it ring twice before answering. Mr. Carter. A voice greeted me, polite, careful. I smiled. We need to talk. Do we? A pause. Then, look, we understand there have been mistakes in the past. But this situation is salvageable. If we work together. Stop. Silence. Let me guess, I continued, leaning back into the couch. Lillian is out. The investors want stability. And you think bringing me back will calm everything down? More silence. Then, finally, yes. I laughed. Not out of amusement. Out of pure satisfaction. You don't get it, do you? I said. I don't want to come back. I don't need to come back. I just needed you all to know what it feels like to lose everything. A sharp inhale from the other end of the line. Marcus, we can fix this. We can. No, you can't, I said simply. And that's the point. And then, I hung up. 12 p.m., Lillian's new reality. By noon, it was official. Lillian had been removed as CEO. The board released a carefully worded statement, filled with corporate doublespeak, but the message was clear. Lillian Carter was no longer the face of NeuroSync. And without NeuroSync, she was nothing. No more TV interviews. No more magazine covers. No more industry respect. She had spent years crafting her own mythology, convincing the world that she was a visionary. Now, she was just another disgraced CEO. And the best part? This wasn't just a corporate failure. This wasn't just financial ruin. This was personal humiliation. Because NeuroSync wasn't known for its products anymore. It was known for its betrayal. And now? Now, Lillian was just a cautionary tale. A woman who tried to rewrite history and ended up erased herself. By midday, Lillian had lost everything. Her company was in freefall. The board had voted her out. The media was tearing her apart. And worst of all, the world was finally learning the truth. She had spent years crafting her reputation, convincing everyone that NeuroSync was her brainchild, that she alone had revolutionized AI-driven automation. But now, investors, journalists, and former employees were digging through the past. They were finding the old reports, the erased interviews, the buried articles where my name had once been attached to the company, before she systematically removed me from history. And suddenly, her empire wasn't just failing. It was being exposed. By 3 p.m., she had nowhere left to run. So she did the only thing she had left. She came to me. I was sitting in my apartment, watching the news with my feet propped up on the coffee table when the intercom buzzed. I didn't check it. I already knew who it was. A part of me had been waiting for this moment. I let her stand outside for a minute. Maybe two. Then, finally, I pressed the button. Yes? A pause. Then, her voice, flat, controlled, but with an edge of raw desperation. Marcus, open the door. I smiled. For the first time in years, Lillian wasn't in control. For the first time, she was on the other side of the glass, watching as everything crumbled, powerless to stop it. Why? I asked casually, stretching my arms. Because we need to talk. I don't think we do. Marcus, you erased me, remember? I'm not part of NeuroSync. I'm nothing without you. So why would you need to talk to a nobody like me? Silence. I let it stretch until I could practically feel her frustration through the speaker. Then, finally softer, she said, please. Now that was interesting. Lillian Carter didn't say please. Ever. I pressed the door release. She looked different. Not in any obvious way. She was still polished, still sharp. The same sleek suit, the same carefully curated image. But something was off. The tension in her shoulders. The slight smudge of eyeliner where she must have rubbed at her eyes. The way she was standing, like she was bracing for something she couldn't control. For the first time since I had met her, Lillian looked lost. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. To what do I owe the pleasure? She exhaled sharply, stepping inside like she still had the authority to do so. Like this wasn't my space. We can fix this, she said immediately. Straight to the point. No small talk. No warm-up. Fix what? I asked, amused. NeuroSync. I raised an eyebrow. You mean the company you stole from me? The one that's currently being picked apart by the media? The one whose stock is crashing by the second? That NeuroSync? Her jaw clenched. Marcus, we don't have time for this. We need to act now before... Before what? I interrupted. Before you lose everything? Her silence told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't here to apologize. She wasn't here to make amends. She was here to save herself. Marcus, listen. Her tone shifted, becoming smoother, calculated. We can undo the damage. The board already called me, I said, cutting her off. Her expression flickered. They did? Oh yes. I smirked. They wanted to offer me my position back, restore my title, make things right. A sharp breath. And I said no. That hit her harder than anything else. She took a small step back, as if physically thrown off balance. You said no? That's right. She swallowed. For a split second, I saw something in her eyes. Something real. Why? She asked quietly. I tilted my head, pretending to consider. Maybe because I don't negotiate with thieves. That made her snap. Thieves? She repeated, her voice rising. Asterisk, I built that company, Marcus. I fought for every deal, every contract. For years, Lillian had convinced herself that she was untouchable. She had controlled the narrative, erased the past, buried me so deep in the background that most people didn't even know I existed. But now, she was watching her own empire burn. And for the first time, there was no way out. By the time Lillian left my apartment, the damage had spread beyond her control. The news cycle had latched onto the scandal like vultures to a corpse. Headlines flooded the internet. Who really built NeuroSync? The man behind the AI steps into the spotlight. From powerhouse to pariah, the unraveling of Lillian Carter. Every journalist, every media outlet that had once worshipped her was now tearing her apart. Because the story had changed. No longer was she the visionary. No longer was she the genius behind NeuroSync's success. No. Now, she was the fraud. The woman who stole an empire, only to lose it all in a matter of days. Inside NeuroSync, chaos ruled. The boardroom was in full meltdown. Investors were fleeing. Clients were backing out of contracts faster than they could draft legal statements. And the stock price? It had dropped so fast that trading had been temporarily halted. Lillian had once held this room with an iron grip. Now, she wasn't even allowed inside. Because as of 4:45 p.m., the board had officially removed her as CEO. The company had no leader, no stability, no product to sell, and worst of all, no future. At exactly 6 p.m., my phone rang. Lillian. I let it ring twice before picking up. Marcus. Her voice was different this time. Not angry, not arrogant, not demanding, just hollow. I didn't say anything. I let her speak first. I lost everything. There was no venom behind it. No blame. No attempt to twist the knife back into me. Just acceptance. I took a slow breath, leaning back in my chair. I know. Another pause. Then, softer. Was this always your plan? No, I admitted. Not at first. But then you gave me no choice. She exhaled sharply, as if she had been holding her breath. I never thought you'd fight back, she said, almost to herself. I chuckled. That was your first mistake? A long silence stretched between us. Then, finally, she asked the question I knew had been weighing on her the most. What happens now? I let the words hang in the air before answering. You disappear, Lillian. I heard her breath hitch. They won't let me, she whispered. They already have. Another pause. Then, barely above a whisper. And you? Me. I smiled, glancing at my laptop screen, where the first draft of my next venture was already in motion. I start over. Without you. And then, for the last time, I hung up on her.